Hello YouTube, my name's James and I'm here today with two different phablets. One you will know, the iPhone 6s Plus, and one you might not know, the Huawei Mate 8. Huawei is a Chinese manufacturer that's becoming a much bigger deal over here in the West, and this phone in particular is actually 2/3 of the price of the iPhone 6s Plus. So we put them both to the test in terms of battery, speed and camera to see if Huawei can actually beat the iPhone 6s Plus.
So first off, we have our battery test. We've put both phones through the same script, which refreshes a web page every 10 seconds. After 3 hours, we came back to see how much battery was left. Apple's track record for battery isn't particularly good, but the iPhone 6s Plus is one of the best yet. Personally, I found the Huawei Mate 8 to have a really good battery, and I think it might actually win this test. Here we are at the halfway point. The iPhone 6s Plus has 61% of its battery remaining, while the Huawei Mate 8 still has a huge 78%. That's the end of our test, so that's been 3 hours. The iPhone 6s Plus came out with 19% left, while the Huawei Mate 8 had a stunning 57% left over. That's really good considering how hard we've pushed this. This test suggests that even after 6 hours of constant browsing, you'd still have battery to phone your mum at the end of the day. It doesn't come as a massive surprise considering the Huawei Mate 8 comes with a 4000 mAh battery, while the iPhone 6s Plus only has a 2750 mAh battery. But then again, iOS is usually better at optimizing. Okay, so here's our speed test. This is where we work out which phone is fastest day to day. We're going to boot up the phones, we're going to run through 10 different apps and do 2 laps of that to see which one is fastest. Usually we'd expect the iPhone 6s Plus to come out on top here with its Apple A9 chipset, but the Huawei does come with a high silicon Kirin 950 chipset that does hold its own. In terms of RAM, the Huawei Mate 8 comes in 2 different versions. There's one with 4GB of RAM and another with 3GB. We're testing the 3GB today. The iPhone 6s Plus comes with 2GB of RAM. Personally, I found the Mate 8 is actually quite snappy compared to some other Android phones, so maybe it might come out on top. The iPhone 6s Plus has just finished, and that took 2 minutes and 10 seconds. And there's the Huawei Mate 8, that took 2 minutes 20 seconds. So the Mate 8 took 10 seconds longer than the iPhone 6s Plus, but it's really interesting to note that if you take the boot up times out of these tests, they're practically the same. The iPhone 6s Plus took 1 minute 56 seconds to run through all the apps, while the Huawei Mate 8 only took 1 minute 57 seconds. Based on our recent phablet test, the iPhone 6s Plus was the fastest we could find. If you put the Huawei Mate 8 into that test, it would come in second place, easily beating Sony, Samsung, Microsoft and the Nexus 6P. And finally, we're on to our camera test. Here we're going to take both phones and do close-up, selfie, landscape, zoom and low light shots to see how each compares. The Huawei Mate 8 comes with a 16 megapixel camera, while the iPhone 6s Plus has a slightly smaller 12 megapixel camera. So we're kicking off with our landscape shot here. Luckily when we did these shots it was a really bright day, so they both turned out great, but the iPhone 6s Plus is just a little bit higher in the contrast. Here are the photos at 100%. This is the actual size of the image. If you look at the Mate 8, it's a little bit clearer, while the iPhone 6s Plus does have quite a bit of noise going on. So here we've tested out the lenses close up. Both images look reasonably similar actually. If you look on the left hand side in the iPhone 6s Plus, it looks a little bit warmer, but both look great. So we've tested out the zoom on both cameras and the verdict is just don't use it. You can tell from both these images that they're quite awful and you might as well just try and get a bit closer to the actual focal point. So here's our low light shot. The Huawei Mate 8 did struggle a little bit with focusing, but both still look really good considering how dark it was. So here's our selfie shot. We've tested a unique feature for each phone. On the iPhone 6s Plus, we've used the Retina Flash that ups the screen brightness to emulate a front-facing flash. And then on the Mate 8, we've used the Beauty mode. It smooths out your skin, which I really find looks quite unnatural. Both cameras turned out really well throughout most of these tests. The Mate 8 has a higher pixel quality, while the contrast on the iPhone 6s Plus is usually better. But in a real life setting, both of these phones are going to give you really good images no matter what you take. So the Mate 8 thrashed the iPhone in the battery test, it held its own in the camera test, and it really challenged the iPhone 6s in the speed test. So what's our verdict? There are a couple of things we haven't actually addressed in this review, and one of them is the software. If you really like iOS, it's probably worth choosing the iPhone 6s Plus. And the Huawei Mate 8 skin isn't really to everyone's taste. We're not really a fan of it either. So looking back on what we've seen in this video, the Huawei Mate 8 does actually hold its own against the iPhone 6s Plus. Has the Chinese rival beaten the top dog? I think it has, considering it costs 2/3 of the iPhone. Is it the phone for you? Well, that's another question. Be sure to let us know in the comments below, and thanks for liking and subscribing.